Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live webinar here in the European Parliament with the Green EFA Group. We're really thankful for you all to join us tonight. We had lots of interest and lots of sign up for people to really learn what happened here last week in a really critical vote in the European Parliament. I'm joined with our co-president, Terry Reintke, and online we have our Danish MEP, Peter-Hansen, who is following these files very closely over the last number of months and will continue to do so. Thanks a lot for joining us both, for both of you joining rather. Terry, in short, what happened last week?
Well, I think it's really important to stress how symbolic and how historic it was what happened last week, because for the first time in the European Parliament, the centre-right, so the EPP, voted through a law with a far-right majority. Now, some of you might say, okay, but similar things have happened before, like, for example, when we were speaking about making the agenda for the plenary or voting on resolutions. That is true, and that was already showing how much there is a cooperation happening already. But now this really was the first time that a law gained a majority in this House between the EPP and the far-right groups here. And this, to me, is really breaking a long-standing tradition, how we have worked here in this House, where it was always clear that pro-European democratic groups are working together, sometimes also in challenging situations where we have to find compromises. But this is really the way how we are creating a common space in this European Parliament. So to me, this is really a groundbreaking and very, very negative and consequential development that happened last week.
In terms of the difference between other moments, we've seen it at committee level where maybe they aligned, let's say, on votes. What is critically different this time?
Well, you see, first of all, what I think is really, really disappointing is, and Kira can go more into detail about this because she was really the one who was doing the negotiations, that initially when this omnibus, so this proposal to change sustainability regulation in the European Parliament, when this came about, there was an agreement between the four pro-European groups to say, look, we work together, we know it's going to be difficult, especially for our group, because actually the laws in questions are laws that we really fought for and that we believe are absolutely central for the Green Deal. So for us, it was already an exercise to say we want to work together, but we did because we want to find pro-European compromise. And then there were negotiations, also some of them going quite positively. Kira is going to say more about it. But then eventually the three groups, so the EPP, the SND, the Social Democrats, and the Renew group, found a compromise between the three of them, excluding us. And with that, basically creating a situation where it was quite unlikely that this compromise would not find a majority in this House, which happened. And then it was again the question, how do we work with this situation right now? Because the mandate was open, it was quite a chaotic situation. And even after this had happened and the difficulty had even been increased, we said we have to sit down together again as the four groups. And from there on, Simon and Kira can say what her impression was. I had the feeling that EPP had already taken a decision that they wanted to go with the far right. So there was an alternative package of amendments that was being proposed to the plenary. And to tell you the truth, this was not happening by chance. And this was not happening in an uncontrolled way. This was happening with a clear aim of finding a majority together with the far right. So it was premeditated, it was coordinated. And in this intensity, this was really the first time that it happened this way. And again, it's breaking with the successful traditions of how we were working in this House as pro-Europeans. And it also is a very slippery slope for the future, because I'm very afraid of a situation where EPP now in any kind of negotiation is basically going to try to blackmail us and say, if you are not playing along with what we want, we are going to go with the far right. This is going to destroy trust, and this is going to move the whole European Union massively to the right with negative consequences in all different fields of policy.
Okay, we'll come back on the implications for Europe, but Kira, live from Copenhagen, I hope you can hear us well. Talk to us a little bit first about those two files, those two laws that on due diligence. Why were they important for us and for
So Sorry, now I got back to you, Simon. Told you about the two.
We're having a bit of connection issues. About the laws themselves, Kira, maybe you could just explain a little bit about those two laws, why they were important.
Sure. So basically, this omnibus was amending two directives, one on sustainability reporting and one on due diligence requirements. So the first one on sustainability reporting was a law that made sure that all companies above a certain size knew what were they emitting, like how much CO2 did they emit, effects, what about their social responsibility, their governance, all of what we would know as making ESG. So with this law, all companies were doing the data in the same way, which is super crucial, because if you have the same data and we agree what is carbon neutral and what is not, we avoid the issue of greenwashing that has been an issue for but also global green policies. And then with this omnibus, the Commission proposed to exclude more than 90% of all the companies from having to do the data collection, to only making it be very, very big companies with more than 1,000 employees. And this will mean it will be more difficult for us as private citizens to know when we invest our pension, are they invested in green products or are they invested in fossil fuel products? The other law is the due diligence law, which is basically a law that makes sure that all the big companies take responsibility for their value chain. A company like Primark, so think about, they would have to check, okay, I'm Primark, but what happens not only in my fabric, but also the fabrics that are delivering textiles to me, the people who are coloring it in the fabrics in third countries, all of this. So this is basically what the law was about to do, and it hasn't entered yet. But despite this, the Conservative and the Commission wanted to torpedo it. The second very important thing, and I will stop here, is that this legislation also obliged companies to make a climate transition plan, making sure that they reach the Paris Agreement. I hope the connection is okay, and that it makes sense, or otherwise I'm just talking out into the dark. It's also fine.
We're hearing you. It's a little bit unstable, but we're getting most of the messages through. If you still hear me, I might go for a follow-up, which is, talk to us a little bit about the negotiations there. I mean, in short, this is really about protecting the European market and supply chains from things like child labor, protecting nature in our supply chains, good things that would have been good for consumers and good for Europe as a market. But then the negotiations started with Omnibus to try water this down. Just very briefly, what was the mood in those negotiations in the run-up to the vote last week?
So I could imagine you asked me very briefly what happened, but I lost you there. But very briefly, what happened was that we made an agreement to try and cooperate as pro-European groups. But after, I think throughout the process, the Conservative didn't really want to do that. They had put in the lead a Swedish Conservative, and those of you, and I see one person at least in the chat joining from Sweden, knows that the Sweden Conservatives are aligning with the far right, they're in government with the Swedish Democrats. So I don't think he ever really had a big intention to go with the center, and saw this as an opportunity to finally move the Conservatives towards the extreme right in their alliances.
Okay, thanks, Kira. Terry, maybe it might still be a little bit complicated for people. There's a lot of internal house business. So if we zoom out a little bit, we have for the first time a very clear alignment of our centre Conservatives. The centre should hold when it comes to being pro-European, pro-democracy, pro-Ukraine, which was Manfred Weber's 3 lines.
It's their criteria, actually. It's the EPP criteria, and now they're working together with people who are clearly breaking these criteria. So
where are we with that, and what could be the broader implications for that alignment shifting to fascist aligned groups and far right groups at European level?
You see, I believe that now this vote, and Kira explained why these laws are so important, and this in itself is already a dramatic development, that now we are losing really core parts of this legislation. But this vote is a symbol for a development that we have already seen over the past months. And since the European election took place, where unfortunately the left liberal majority that we had beforehand, so the left, the Social Democrats, the Greens, and the Liberals in this House in the last legislature had a majority, unfortunately is not there anymore. So basically for any kind of negotiation, we need to somehow find allies in EPP to work with. And we said as a group, look, this is certainly not going to be easy. We see how the general trend is in the world. There is a lot of attacks on the Green Deal, on climate policy in general, on democracy, and so on and so on. But because we believe in this pro-European working together, we are ready to sit down with the four groups and form a majority. And in certain instances, for example, when it came to the vote on Ursula von der Leyen, this worked. We as a Green group, and we have a lot of criticism towards the Commission President, we voted in favor of her because we are so strongly committed to the European project to work and to deliver for the citizens' needs. And this, to me, should have been the starting point of a more coordinated, systematic collaboration between these four groups. I know the European Parliament will never work as a national parliament, like where you have a coalition between groups and then you work together. But to me, the dynamic that we have now is very, very detrimental to working fast, to working collectively, to working in a pro-European spirit, because we are not systematically sitting down with these four groups, for example, creating packages where I'm also ready to say, look, maybe on this law, we can move more towards your direction if in this case you are seeing that this is really a priority for us.
But do you think that it could be a stable majority working with the far right if EPP decides that that's now the way to go?
Well, to be honest with you, Simon, I think that that is obviously not an option, because when we take an example, like, for example, the European budget, the multi-annual financial framework, as we call it here, we know that the far right is never going to vote in favor of moving something forward in a European spirit. So having a stable majority between the conservatives and the far right is not going to be possible. And we know that anything that is supposed to be built on a European level, anything that moves us forward, is never going to be possible with the far right. So EPP is now basically using a destructive majority, something that works against Europe, that works against moving forward, in order to put pressure and to have a possibility of blackmailing the pro-Europeans. And now you can say, well, but it works great for them. Honestly, I don't think that it's going to work, because on issues like the budget, on issues like other legislative proposals where we will need the center to hold, the atmosphere is going to be poisoned. And as I said before, in order to move things forward in such a complicated majority situation, you need to have a trusting relationship between the pro-European groups. And this is what EPP is putting at stake. So it's not only about our supply chains and, the international climate protection, but it is about the very core of how we work together here in this parliament. And negotiations have become more difficult over the past weeks and months anyway. And we are going to be under pressure from Russia, obviously, from China, from the US. So unless we can manage to recreate this core, we are going to look at a very, very difficult rest of this legislature.
Okay, I'm going to turn to Kira, still hoping she can hear us well. We're not at the end of the process yet, as we understand it. What is the next step for these two key laws?
Well, the next step is that tomorrow there will be the first negotiation with the member states. And as Terry said, it's the first time it will be a far-right majority negotiating on behalf of the parliament. And then on the 9th or 8th of December, we expect that there will be a final agreement. And then we need to vote it again in the parliament, in the plenary. And I think it's going to be quite interesting to see what will happen there, because of course the parliament is now saying we want to remove the climate transition plans. So will that be lost, or are there some of the member states who we can mobilize and make sure that they take up the fight of keeping, for example, climate transition plans? So all hope is not out, but it looks very, very difficult up until the 8th of December.
Are you hopeful, or do you think this new dynamic is here to stay now with EPP?
No, I'm very depressed, and I have been for the last couple of weeks. I think what is scary is that at some point, like this time, the far right said, "Okay, fine, we do whatever the conservatives want, and we don't need any of the credit." But they will not do that forever. At some point, they will start saying, "Okay, we want actually also our priorities, our things in, and we want to be publicly part of a deal." So I think the EPP is also walking into a trap now that's going to make it very, very difficult. In maybe not tomorrow, but then half a year or something.
Yeah.
On walking into a trap, or maybe sleepwalking into a trap, are we sleepwalking in at EU level into something far more serious, where far right extremist policies are being set now at European level, which has ramifications for everything, for all of our work?
I don't want to sound depressive, but I think, yes, there is this real danger. And I think we have to be aware of this. And I mean, it's not something that exclusively happens at European level. We see more and more member states. Kira was mentioning the case of Sweden, but we see other member states where center-right parties are giving power to far-right extremists, basically. And as a German, I can tell you, showing from history, never underestimate these people. Do not believe that you can keep them in check by putting them into powerful positions. They are a danger to democracy. They are a danger to Europe. They are a danger to all the rights that we have fought for over the past decades. So I think, yes, there is a very, very big danger. But for me, what is key right now, I mean, now I think there is a moment to also be a little bit depressed and really upset about what happened last week. But then the next step is, how do we mobilize against this? And I already felt that it was fantastic that we had thousands of people who were mobilizing, who were sending emails, who were going very much into a mode of saying, we cannot let this happen. And I, for one, believe that this can make a difference, because we know that in Germany and other European countries, center-right parties are still afraid of this kind of mobilization, where people say, we do not want you to cooperate with the far right. We are afraid of sorry, there was, I think, a technical problem. Okay. So we are afraid of what might happen if these kind of collaborations become the rule rather than the exception. So I think if people are really going to speak out about this, we can still turn it back to the other side. And again, at the end of the day, in politics, everything is about the majorities that we have. And unfortunately, in this house, we do not have a left liberal majority anymore. But for me, turning the page and saying we have to get out of the defensive and more into the offensive again on climate issues, on democracy, on social justice, and win elections and win majorities back, this will be absolutely key to prevent a catastrophe from happening.
Kira, if I think it's still there. You're allowed to be depressed the last few days, but we also need you to be motivated now. So I'm wondering what your motivated message would be for the many, many people who signed up to hear you tonight and see what happened. What would be a motivating message for the future?
Well, I've been engaged in politics for 10 years now. It feels like a lifetime, being as young as I am. And in those 10 years, I think what's kept me motivated is that you can see that sometimes it goes really, really bad, but it also sometimes goes really well. And we've seen the Paris Agreement in 2015. We've seen the elections in Germany in 2019, where the Greens did amazing. We just had an election in New York. We're seeing the Green Party being very strong in London. So we're seeing a climate movement that are on the rise and sometimes on decline, but it always goes up again. So I think what keeps me motivated is the knowledge that there will always be people who will fight whatever they have to create more rights and also a better climate. But we are at a down still now, so we just need to get that energy back up. But we know that it is there, that it is in people who want to fight for a better future.
And Terry, also a message for citizens from your side. There's a lot of other issues happening, but as you said, we're maybe in the full backlash now. The empire has struck back when it comes to how well we did in the Green Deal files on climate the last maybe 10 years and where we are now. But how do people at home help? How can they get involved in ways that are useful?
Well, can I start with a positive message? Because yesterday we had the first round of the local election in Kiel, in the capital of Schleswig-Holstein, and the Green candidate is going to go to the second round. And we are very, very hopeful that he's actually going to win it. And we have seen in recent weeks and months also that there is a turn back, that again, as Kira was saying, you know, the tide is shifting. As far as I know, there are also going to be local elections in Denmark tomorrow. So Kira is in Copenhagen to still campaign in these last days. And I think these are the moments where we really have to mobilize everything to fight back the momentum in a way. But people are, of course, key. You are key in making this possible. A lot of you already have done this. I mentioned the many emails that were sent, the mobilization on social media. If the Conservatives can just go through with voting with the far right and nobody cares, this is the biggest defeat that we can have. This wasn't the case. That's really fantastic news. We have shown how crucial green politics are. But you can, of course, mobilize more. We have the end of the year, a lot of people celebrating Christmas coming up. So, of course, use social media, use other platforms like messenger services, but also speak to your friends and family. When you go back home, maybe you're studying somewhere, you go back home, speak to the people there, talk to them about why it is important to stand up for the climate now, to stand up for democracy. And I think with this kind of spirit, with this kind of motivation, we can turn this back around. And then, as Kira was saying, we will have better days where we will celebrate big wins again.
On that note, a big thank you to Kira and best of luck with the local elections this week. And a big thank you to Terry for staying a bit later for this podcast. And a big thank you for everyone who has signed emails. We had 20,000 emails last week. It's a motivating force for us. It's a motivating force for you, I hope, and we'll be doing a lot more of it. You can also join our Courage Club, which is a WhatsApp group to give you the latest messages, things that we're doing at European level. And you can follow us there, and we'll be gaining access to all of the nice things that we're doing and trying to do at our level. And on that note, thanks, and we'll see you all.